Today, I'm going to share with you how my time in corporate world helped me become a better entrepreneur. So I spent probably 15 years of my life in corporate retail, from one end of retail to the other. And those of you who follow me, you'll know a lot more about that story because I share it fairly regular. I lived in a very siloed team. We didn't have a great deal to do with the outside world a lot. And we just lived in our own bubble, worked hard, earned good money, did what we needed to do. And then I left the corporate world and I realized I was scared to create content. And I know that I'm not alone in that. I've spoken to a lot of people since then who all worry about the same things. We're trained in that corporate environment to ask for permission to post things, to keep our opinions to ourselves, to not voice things, and that we're just a cog in the machine. When you become an entrepreneur and you run your own business, you need to unincorporate a lot of that. You need to start to share the things that you've been told you shouldn't. And mastering that, I'm not going to say I've mastered it, but attempting to master that is what leads us to be very engaging for the audience because we share our own experiences. Now, I remember being told I couldn't post about leadership without running it past my head of HR. And I just point blank refused because I'm a rebel. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be given permission to post. And I didn't even reference the business in that. It was my own personal opinion. It was an opinion post. It was me trying to help other people who were leaders in that post. And it took me a long time when I started my own business to feel comfortable with that imposter syndrome, with being blocked in my own head. Why do I have anything to share? Who am I to comment on these things? I'm no one. I'm not a celebrity. I haven't run my own business for years. But actually, there's a lot of the lessons that we did learn in that corporate environment that are extremely valuable to others. And once I started to share that and become more comfortable with that, the content started to flow much more freely. I remember sending the first few videos and I got no likes. I got no engagement. I had a very small network. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying posting that first video up, and it was awful. But then, you know what? I kept going, kept it up, and kept pushing myself and kept getting better and learning from others, mimic what others do, mimic elements of what other people were doing, and eventually got to a point where I'm fairly confident with it now. What is probably harder now is trying to put fresh twists on the content that I've already produced, so that more people can access it, more people can understand it in a different way, in a different viewpoint. But my point with all of this is that if you're from a corporate background and you've recently started your own business, creating content can be a terrifying experience. However, you just need to get over it because you do have valuable things to say. You do have a lot of interesting information hidden within your head. My honest advice would be that rather than try and create one video like this, don't try and create this video as your first video. Don't try and make it 3 or 4 minutes long. It's really hard to do well. Even I struggle with it now after 5 or 6 years. What I would say though is record yourself talking for 20, 30, 40 minutes. Talk about things you're passionate about. You don't have to use all of it. You can take that content and turn it into lots of smaller clips, which you'll be much more comfortable with, by the way, because you can edit out a lot of the waffle that you've talked. And you will waffle. We all do. Right? But take that and it becomes a much more conversational style. It's a bit weird at first, I'm not going to lie. It feels weird talking to a camera when there's nobody else here. In my head, I imagine the audience. I imagine you out there watching this video, and I imagine I'm on a Teams call or a Zoom call and you've asked me a question. And after a while, after practicing that for a while, it does actually work. It does start to feel more natural. And I don't get nervous about going on camera much anymore, to be honest. Certainly not remotely. In person's a bit different, but remotely is not too bad. But that content that you're creating in that 20, 30 minutes will last you a month or more. You can reuse it down the line. It's absolute golden content. But use that experience that you've generated in that corporate world in your previous life. And I promise you, you will thank me for doing it because your audience will love the real grit and insights that you've shared with them that you think aren't useful. But actually, they really are. I'll see you next week on the Content Classroom.